Jiho, she started, then stopped. Royal training had never prepared her for this moment. Let me go first, he said gently. I love you, Naira. Not the princess, not the political alliance, not the arrangement we made. I love the woman who sits on the floor to eat breakfast because the dining table is too big. I love how you bite your lip when you're thinking. I love that you care more about colonial medical supplies than fancy court ceremonies. Tears sparkled in Naira's eyes. I love you too. I think I started falling for you the day you told me my advisors were all wrong and you didn't even apologize for it. They stood there in the fading light, finally saying the words that had been building between them for months. The political drama, the council votes, the contracts and arrangements, none of it mattered anymore. This was just two people who had found something unexpected and precious. So what happens now? Jiho asked. We're legally married, but we want to do this properly, Naira finished, the way we should have from the beginning. 3 weeks later, they held a second wedding ceremony. This time, it wasn't a political spectacle broadcast across the empire. It was small, private, and real. The ceremony took place in the same garden where they had confessed their love. Naira wore a simple white dress that combined human and Cytherian styles, flowing fabric like a traditional earth wedding gown, but with intricate silver, threading that caught the light like stars. Jiho wore his dress military uniform, but with a ceremonial sash in Cytherian royal colors that Naira had given him. Only their closest friends attended. General Kato served as Jiho's best man, while Mira stood as Naira's maid of honor. Even Sergeant Park was there, grinning widely as he watched his former commander marry for love instead of duty. The vows they wrote themselves were a blend of human and alien traditions. They exchanged rings as humans did, but also shared a cup of ceremonial wine according to Cytherian custom. When Jiho spoke his vows in halting but sincere Cytherian, several guests wiped away tears. I promise to stand beside you, he said, not as your hired protector or political ally, but as your partner in everything we face together. I promise to trust you, Naira replied, not because a contract requires it, but because you've earned that trust every single day. When they kissed, it was nothing like their formal cold first wedding. This kiss was warm, genuine, and witnessed by people who truly cared about their happiness. 6 months later, their relationship had transformed from a political scandal into something entirely different. The outer colonies, which had once viewed their marriage with suspicion, now pointed to it as proof that the royal family was changing for the better. Princess Naira's husband doesn't just give advice, one colonial representative told the Galactic News Network. He listens. He understands what it's like to be an outsider, so he helps her understand us. The mining colonies that had once been on the verge of rebellion were now among the Empire's most productive and loyal regions. Trade agreements flourished, communication improved, and the combination of Naira's diplomatic skills and Jiho's practical perspective had created a new model for imperial governance. They balance each other, General Kato observed during a staff meeting. The princess provides vision and authority. The colonel provides grounding and fresh perspective. Together, they're better leaders than either could be alone. Other alien worlds began requesting human advisors for their own governments. The Galactic Peace Corps started new cultural exchange programs. What had begun as a desperate arrangement between two people trying to solve their individual problems had become a symbol of what was possible when different species worked together with mutual respect. On quiet evenings, Jiho and Naira would walk through the same garden where they had first admitted their love. Sometimes they talked about policy and politics. Sometimes they just enjoyed being together without any agenda or obligation. Do you ever regret it? Naira asked one night as they watched the 3 moons rise over the crystal city. Giving up your dream of having your own ship and traveling the galaxy? Jiho smiled, pulling her closer. I am traveling the galaxy. I'm just doing it with the best partner I could ask for. Even when that partner comes with a crown and a council full of difficult nobles? Especially then, he replied. Besides, someone has to keep you from making all your advisors agree with you all the time. Naira laughed, the sound echoing off the crystal fountains around them. Their love story had begun with a business proposition, but it had become something much more valuable, Proof that the best partnerships, whether personal or political, were built on understanding, respect, and the courage to grow together in awe. The palace archives, their original marriage contract, still existed, but it had been replaced by something far more binding, two hearts that had chosen each other freely, and a love that had changed not just their lives, but their entire world. She thought about Jiho, probably already on his way off-planet. She thought about the miners on Zerion 7 who had thanked her personally for the medical supplies. She thought about all the small improvements they had made together, all the problems they had solved by listening instead of commanding. "Yes," she said, her voice steady, "I have quite a lot to say." Outside, Jiho heard the announcement over the spaceport speakers. Transport to Earth departure delayed 1 hour due to technical difficulties. He looked up at the departure board, then at the news screen still showing the council chamber. Naira was speaking now, defending herself with the same courage she had shown in battle. 1 hour. Maybe the universe was giving him a sign, or maybe he was just looking for an excuse to do what his heart had been telling him all along. Princess Naira stood before the royal council, her spine straight and her voice unwavering despite the storm of emotions inside her. The 12 council members sat like judges, their faces carved from stone, waiting for her to justify her right to rule. "You claim I've shown poor judgment," she began, looking directly at Lord Varian. "Let me tell you what real judgment looks like." She activated a holographic display showing colony statistics. "Before my partnership with Colonel Jiho, the outer colonies were planning to join the rebellion. We had 17 separate disputes, declining trade revenues, and growing civil unrest." "And now?" Lady Zeta interrupted coldly. "Now we have signed trade agreements with 14 colonies, medical supply chains that have reduced colonial death rates by 60%, and communication systems that allow real dialogue instead of threats." Naira's voice grew stronger. "This wasn't achieved through force or traditional diplomacy. It was achieved through understanding. Understanding provided by your human advisor," Advisor Thane said with obvious disdain, "proving our point that you cannot function independently." "No," Naira replied firmly. "Proving that good leadership means listening to different perspectives, not surrounding yourself with people who only agree with you." She gestured toward the council members. "Everyone in this room went to the same elite academies, learned the same strategies, and thinks the same way. When I asked about the colony disputes, you all gave identical answers. Increase tariffs, show strength, force compliance. None of you suggested actually talking to the colonists to understand their problems." Lord Varian's expression darkened. "Princess, you seem to forget that these traditions and methods have maintained our empire for centuries." "And what has that gotten us?" Naira shot back. "Rebellions, instability, and colonies so desperate they're willing to fight us rather than work with us. Maybe it's time to try something new." "Something human, you mean?" Lady Zeta said with disgust. "Something effective," Naira corrected. "Jiho didn't bring human solutions to our problems. He brought fresh thinking, honest communication, and the ability to see situations from multiple angles. Those aren't human traits, they're leadership traits." The council chamber fell silent. In the gallery, palace staff and minor nobles shifted uncomfortably. Some looked convinced by her words, others remained skeptical. "You speak of Colonel Jiho as if he were still here," Advisor Thane observed with a cruel smile. "But he abandoned you at the first sign of difficulty. He dissolved your marriage contract and fled to the spaceport. How does that demonstrate the loyalty and partnership you praise so highly?" The words hit Naira like a physical blow. She felt her composure crack for just a moment, and everyone in the room saw it. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. "The Colonel made his own choice," she said quietly, trying to regain her footing. "A choice that proves our point," Lord Varian declared. "If your own husband doesn't believe in your leadership enough to stand beside you, why should we?" That's when the chamber doors burst open. Jiho strode in, still wearing his travel clothes and carrying his military bag. His hair was disheveled from running, and he was slightly out of breath, but his eyes were focused and determined. The entire room turned to stare at him in shock. "Sorry I'm late," he said, looking directly at Naira. "Traffic was terrible." "Colonel," Advisor Thane sputtered, "this is a closed council session. You have no right to be here." "Actually, I do," Jiho replied, walking to stand beside Naira. "I'm her husband, and this concerns our marriage. I have every right to speak." "Lord," Varian recovered first. "Your marriage contract has been dissolved. You are no longer bound to each other." "You're right," Jiho said, surprising everyone. "The contract is dissolved, but that's not why I'm here." He turned to face Naira, and when he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the chamber. "I'm not here because of a piece of paper or a business arrangement. I'm here because I love my wife, and I believe in her leadership more than anyone in this room." Gasps echoed through the gallery. Even some council members looked stunned. "Princess Naira is the most capable leader I've ever served under," Jiho continued, addressing the council directly. "She's intelligent, compassionate, and brave enough to admit when old methods aren't working. She doesn't need me to make decisions for her. She needs advisors who will tell her the truth instead of what they think she wants to hear." "This is highly irregular," Lady Zeta protested. "So was asking a human to marry you," Jiho replied. "So was actually listening to colonial complaints instead of just crushing them. So was fighting beside your soldiers instead of commanding from a safe distance. Princess Naira does irregular things because regular things weren't working." He took Naira's hand and she felt strength flow between them. "I dissolved our contract because I thought I was protecting her," he said. "I was wrong. A real partner doesn't run when things get difficult. A real partner stands and fights together." Naira looked at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You came back. I never should have left." The council chamber buzzed with whispered conversations. Some council members looked moved by Jiho's declaration. Others appeared more hostile than before. "Very touching," Advisor Thane said sarcastically. "But romantic speeches don't change the fundamental issue. This human influences the princess's decisions inappropriately." "Then let me be clear," Naira said, her voice ringing with authority. "Every major decision I've made has been mine alone. Jiho provides input as any good advisor should, but I am the one who chooses which advice to follow. That's what leaders do." "The question before us," Lord Varian announced, "is whether this council still has confidence in Princess Naira's ability to rule effectively. All in favor of maintaining confidence." The vote was agonizingly close. 4 hands rose immediately, then a 5th after a long pause. A 6th council member looked around the room, considering, then slowly raised her hand. 6 votes in favor," Lord Varian announced. 6 votes against. The motion fails by 1 vote. Naira felt her knees nearly buckle with relief. She had survived, barely. "However," Lord Varian continued ominously, "this council will be watching your future decisions very carefully, Princess. One more incident like this, and there will be another vote." As the council dismissed, Jiho squeezed Naira's hand gently. "Think we can avoid any more incidents?" he whispered. "With you beside me, I think we can handle whatever comes next." The palace gardens were quiet in the early evening light. Jiho and Naira walked along the crystal fountain path, finally alone, after the chaos of the council vote. The political storm had passed, but the emotional aftermath lingered between them like morning mist. "I can't believe you came back," Naira said softly, stopping beside a flowering tree that glowed with bioluminescent petals. "When Thane said you had gone to the spaceport, I thought I was protecting you," Jiho interrupted, his voice heavy with regret. "I convinced myself that leaving was the noble thing to do. But really I was just scared." "Scared of what?" He turned to face her fully, his dark eyes serious. "Scared of admitting that somewhere along the way, our fake marriage became the most real thing in my life." Naira felt her breath catch. They had danced around these feelings for months, hiding behind their contract and their duties, but there was no pretending anymore. "And if the princess refuses," another voice asked, "then perhaps we need to reconsider whether she's fit to rule," came Thane's cold reply. "A leader who can be manipulated by romantic feelings is a danger to the empire." Jiho felt his heart sink. He had known this day would come eventually. He was an outsider, a human in an alien world, and he was damaging Naira's reputation just by existing. Inside the chamber, Naira was fighting back with everything she had. Jiho has never manipulated. To me, she said firmly. He offers honest advice, which is more than I can say for most of the people in this room. Your Highness, Lord Varian's voice was gentle but patronizing, we understand that you may have developed feelings for this human. It's natural, even expected, but you must think of your duty to the Empire. My duty is to be a good ruler. Jiho helps me be a better leader, or he makes you think you're better while actually weakening your position, Lady Zeta countered. Look at this objectively, Princess. Before this marriage, the outer colonies were quiet. Now we have rebel attacks, political instability, and questions about your judgment. Is that a coincidence? The accusation was unfair, but Naira could see how they might connect the dots that way. The timing did look suspicious to anyone who wanted to see conspiracy. I need time to consider your concerns, she said finally. Time is a luxury we may not have, Thane warned. If rumors of the princess's compromised judgment reach the outer colonies, it could spark more rebellions. After the council dismissed, Naira returned to her quarters feeling defeated. She found Jiho waiting for her, pacing by the window. His expression was serious, troubled. We need to talk, he said without his usual warmth. If this is about the council meeting, I can handle them, she began. I heard some of it, he admitted. Naira, they're right about one thing. I'm hurting your position just by being here. That's not true. Look at the facts, Jiho said, his voice becoming distant and professional. Political instability, questions about your judgment, threats to your rule. All of this started after our marriage. Correlation isn't causation, she protested. You know that. Maybe. But I also know that I'm not worth risking your throne over. He pulled out their original marriage contract from his jacket. I think we should end this early. Clean break, no hard feelings. You can tell the council that you terminated the arrangement to prove you're not compromised. Naira stared at the contract in his hands, feeling like he had just slapped her. After everything they had been through together, after the growing closeness and unspoken feelings, he was ready to walk away the moment things got difficult. So that's it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The first sign of real trouble, and you want to run? I'm trying to protect you. No, you're protecting yourself, she said, anger and hurt mixing in her voice. You never really cared about this marriage or about me. It was always just business to you, wasn't it? Jiho opened his mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. How could he explain that he was leaving because he cared too much, not too little? Fine, Naira said, snatching the contract from his hands. Consider our arrangement terminated. 3 days had passed since their fight, and the palace felt like a tomb. Jiho packed his few belongings into a military duffel bag, the same one he had arrived with 8 months ago. His hands moved mechanically, folding uniforms, organizing personal items, checking his discharge papers. But his mind kept wandering to memories he was trying to forget. The sound of Naira's laugh during their morning coffee talks. The way she bit her lip when she was thinking hard about a problem. How she had looked at him in the medical bay, like losing him would have broken something inside her. Stop it, he muttered to himself. It was always temporary. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. He opened it to find Sergeant Park, one of the soldiers who had served under him during the recent battle. Sir, is it true? Are you really leaving? Park asked, his expression confused and disappointed. My contract is finished, Jiho replied simply. But why now? We need you here. The princess needs you. Jiho zipped up his bag with more force than necessary. The princess has an entire council of advisors. She doesn't need one human soldier. Park stepped inside, closing the door behind him. With respect, sir, that's garbage and you know it. I've served under a lot of officers, and I've never seen anyone work with the princess the way you do. You balance each other out. It's complicated. No, it's not, Park said bluntly. You're both too proud to admit you care about each other, so you're throwing away something good because it got difficult. Jiho wanted to argue, but Park's words hit too close to home. Meanwhile, 3 floors above, Naira sat in her private study, staring at official documents without really seeing them. The vote of no confidence was scheduled for tomorrow morning. If she lost, she would be stripped of her crown and exiled from the planet. Everything she had worked for, everything she believed in, would be gone. Her personal assistant Mira entered, with another stack of papers. "The final vote count projections, Your Highness," Mira said softly. "It's not good." Naira looked at the numbers. 6 council members firmly against her, 4 definitely supporting her, and 2 undecided. She needed 7 votes to retain her position. "Has there been any word from the outer colonies?" she asked. "Their support might influence the undecided." "Votes?" "That's the problem," Mira replied hesitantly. "The mining colonies are refusing to make a statement. They say they don't trust the royal court anymore, regardless of who rules." Naira felt her heart sink. The colonists she had tried so hard to help, the people whose problems Jiho had helped her understand, were abandoning her when she needed them most. "There is one thing," Mira added. "Colonel Jiho's transport to the spaceport isn't until tomorrow afternoon. If you wanted to—" "No," Naira said firmly. "He made his choice. He decided I wasn't worth fighting for." But even as she said the words, she felt their falseness. Deep down she knew Jiho had been trying to protect her, not abandon her. Her pride had been hurt and she had lashed out instead of listening to what he was really saying. The next morning, Jiho stood in the spaceport departure lounge, watching news coverage of the council vote on a public screen. Other travelers gathered around, murmuring about the political crisis. Most seemed to think Naira would lose. "The princess made some good changes," one alien merchant said to his companion, "but the nobles never liked her independence." "That human husband of hers didn't help," the companion replied. "Made her look weak taking advice from an outsider." Jiho clenched his fists. Everything people said proved the council's point. His presence had hurt Naira's image, even if his advice had been sound. His communicator buzzed with a message from General Kato. "The vote is starting. She could still use your support." Jiho stared at the message for a long time. He could still catch a military transport back to the palace. He could walk into that council chamber and stand beside Naira, showing everyone that he believed in her leadership. But what if his presence made things worse? What if the council members saw his return as proof that Naira couldn't make decisions? Without him? He deleted the message without responding. Back in the council chamber, Naira stood before the 12 members who would decide her fate. She wore her formal royal robes, her hair arranged in the traditional style, every inch the perfect princess, but inside she felt hollow. "Princess Naira," Lord Varian began formally, "this council has lost confidence in your ability to rule effectively. Your recent decisions have shown poor judgment and emotional instability. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Naira looked around the room, seeing faces that had once respected her, now cold and disapproving. In the gallery, palace staff and minor nobles watched silently. Everyone was waiting for her to either fight or surrender. "Princess, with respect, you're the target. If you stay, everyone dies." She looked at the frightened faces of the miners, then at Jiho. "Together. We all go together." That's when the assassins breached the front door. Jiho spun around, firing. At the first figure through the entrance, his shot connected, but more kept coming. He pushed Naira toward the tunnel as laser blasts scorched the air around them. "Go," he shouted. But as Naira reached the tunnel entrance, she saw one of the assassins, flanking from the side, weapon aimed directly at Jiho's back. Without thinking, she raised her own gun and fired. The shot saved Jiho's life but drew the assassin's attention to her. The return fire caught her in the shoulder, spinning her around. She stumbled, but kept moving toward the tunnel. "Naira!" Jiho's voice was raw with something more than professional concern. The sirens woke them at dawn. Jiho rolled out of bed in his palace quarters, instantly alert as the emergency broadcast echoed through the corridors. "All military personnel report immediately. The capital is under attack." Through his window he could see explosions lighting up the morning sky. Enemy ships, painted in the dark colors of the rebel coalition, swooped between the crystal towers of the city. This wasn't a small raid like before, this was war. He found Naira already in the command center, still wearing her nightclothes but with a military jacket thrown over them. Her hair was pulled back hastily and she was barking orders to a dozen different officers through communication screens. "Status report," she demanded from General Kato, her head of defense. 17 enemy vessels confirmed, possibly more. the old general replied grimly. They've knocked out our main communication tower and are targeting civilian evacuation routes. This is coordinated, Princess. Someone gave them detailed intelligence about our defenses. Jiho studied the tactical displays. The enemy had positioned themselves perfectly to cut the city in half. It was brilliant and terrifying. They're trying to trap civilians in the lower districts, he observed. If we don't break through their line soon, thousands of people will be caught in the crossfire. Naira turned to him, her eyes sharp despite the early hour. What do you recommend? Ground assault. Fast and direct. Take back the communication hub while our air forces engage their main fleet. But someone needs to lead the ground troops personally, or they won't move fast enough. I'll take the ground mission, General Kato said. No, Jiho interrupted. No offense, General, but you're needed here for overall coordination. I'll lead the ground forces. Naira felt her stomach clench. The ground mission was essentially a suicide run. The communication hub was surrounded by enemy forces, heavily defended, and anyone leading that assault would be a primary target. Jiho, that's... She started, then caught herself. She couldn't show personal concern in front of her officers. It would undermine her authority. It's the right call, she said formally. Take 50 of our best soldiers. You have 2 hours to retake that hub, or we lose the ability to coordinate citywide defenses. Their eyes met for a moment. So much passed between them in that glance. Worry, determination, and something deeper that neither had fully acknowledged yet. I'll get it done, Jiho said simply. An hour later, Jiho was crouched behind the ruins of a market stall, laser fire, crackling overhead. The enemy had turned the communication hub into a fortress. His soldiers were pinned down, taking casualties, and time was running out. Alpha team, move left. Beta team, covering fire. He spoke into his radio. But only static, answered back. The enemy was jamming short-range communications too. Meanwhile, in the command center, Naira watched the tactical display with growing horror. The dots representing Jiho's team had stopped moving. No communications were getting through. For all, she knew they were all dead. Princess, one of her advisors said quietly, perhaps we should consider evacuating the command center. If Colonel Jiho's mission has failed... Don't, she said sharply. He's not dead. But as the minutes ticked by with no word, doubt crept in. The last message from the ground team had been garbled and cut short. The enemy ships were closing in on the palace itself. 2 miles away, Jiho made a desperate decision. With communications down, he couldn't coordinate a complex assault. But he could create a distraction big enough to let his team reach the hub. He grabbed an explosive charge from his pack and sprinted toward the enemy position alone, drawing their fire away from his soldiers. The plan worked. His team broke. Through. But the explosion that followed threw him against a concrete wall hard enough to knock him unconscious. When the communication hub came back online 20 minutes later, Naira's first call was to the ground team. Colonel Jiho, report, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. This is Sergeant Park, came the reply. The colonel is... He's hurt bad, Princess. We're getting him to medical now, but... The world seemed to stop. Naira stared at the communication device, unable to process what she was hearing. Princess, General Kato touched her shoulder gently. The battle isn't over. We need you focused. She nodded numbly and returned to coordinating the defense. But for the next 3 hours, as they slowly pushed back the enemy forces, part of her mind was always with Jiho in the medical bay. When the all-clear finally sounded, she ran through the palace corridors, not caring who saw their dignified princess sprinting like a common soldier. She burst into the medical bay to find Jiho, sitting up in bed, bandaged but alive. You idiot, she said, tears streaming down her face. You complete idiot. Nice to see you too, he replied weakly, then more seriously. Are you okay? I lost communications and thought... I thought you were dead, she whispered. Before either of them could think about protocol or their fake marriage contract, she was in his arms, holding him like she never wanted to let go. Neither of them noticed Advisor Thane watching from the doorway, his expression calculating and cold. The royal council chamber felt colder than usual. Princess Naira sat at the head of the crescent-shaped table, facing 12 of the most powerful nobles in the empire. Their faces were stern, disapproving, and she knew this meeting wasn't going to go well. Your Highness, began Lord Varian, the eldest council member, we need to discuss your recent decisions. Which decisions? Naira asked, though she suspected she knew. Your reliance on the human, another council member, Lady Zeta, said with obvious distaste. This marriage arrangement has gone too far. Advisor Thane, who had requested this emergency session, stood up with a datapad in his hands. If I may, Your Highness, I have documented several concerning incidents. He activated a holographic display that showed footage from security cameras. There was Jiho and Naira working together in the war room, laughing over coffee in the morning, and most damaging of all, the moment in the medical bay when she had embraced him after the battle. The princess shows clear emotional attachment to her contracted husband, Thane announced. This compromises her judgment and makes her vulnerable to manipulation. That's ridiculous, Naira snapped. Jiho has proven himself repeatedly. His strategies saved lives during the rebel attacks. Exactly our point, Lord Varian said. You defend him without considering the political implications. A true leader would maintain emotional distance from her tools. The word tools made Naira's blood boil, but she forced herself to remain calm. Furthermore, Lady Zeta continued, there are rumors that this human has been influencing your policy decisions. The new medical supply program for the outer colonies, the communication upgrades for mining settlements, these weren't your ideas originally. Those are good policies that help our people, Naira argued. That's not the point, Thane interjected. The point is that you're taking advice from someone with no formal education, no noble blood, and no understanding of our traditions. He's a hired soldier, nothing more. Outside the council chamber, Jiho was walking past when he heard his name mentioned. He stopped, knowing he shouldn't eavesdrop, but unable to help himself. The human must go, he heard Lord Varian say clearly. This marriage contract should be terminated immediately. Actually, Thane, I think fresh perspective might be exactly what we need. Jiho, would you like to attend the council meeting today? Not just as my husband, but as an advisor. The room fell completely silent. Even the servants stopped moving, the Fuar. Crystal Conference Hall sparkled under the three suns of Valora Prime. Princess Naira sat at the negotiation table, surrounded by delegates from 12 different worlds. The peace summit had been going well until the explosion started. The first blast shattered the massive windows, sending glittering fragments across the marble floor. Alien diplomats screamed and dove for cover as armed rebels poured through the breach. Their leader, a scarred warrior named Vex, pointed his energy weapon directly at Naira. The false princess dies today, he shouted over the chaos. Jiho didn't think. He grabbed the heavy conference table and flipped it sideways, creating a barrier, just as laser blasts scorched the air where Naira had been sitting. She rolled behind the makeshift cover, her formal diplomatic robes torn, but her eyes alert and focused. How many? She asked calmly, pulling a small weapon from her boot. Jiho was surprised she even carried one. 8, maybe 10, he replied, checking his sidearm. They came through the east entrance. There's probably more outside. The emergency exit is blocked, Naira observed, peering around the table. They planned this well. Another volley of energy blasts peppered their position. The rebels were advancing, using overturned chairs as shields. In 30 seconds, they would have clear shots. Can you cover me? Jiho asked. I need to reach that support pillar. Naira nodded without hesitation. On 3. 1, 2. She popped up and fired precise shots that forced the rebels to duck. Jiho sprinted across the open space, sliding behind the massive pillar just as return fire blazed past his head. From his new position, he could see the rebels' formation. Naira, he called out. The leader with the scar. He's directing them from behind that fountain. If we take him out, the others might retreat. I see him, she replied, but I can't get a clear shot from here. Jiho studied the room's layout. There was a balcony above, accessible through a maintenance ladder on the far wall. Risky, but it would give him the high ground. Keep them busy. For 2 minutes, he said. I'm going up. That's suicide, Naira protested. Too much open ground to cover. Trust me. Something in his voice made her nod. As Jiho moved, Naira provided covering fire with deadly accuracy. Her shots weren't random or panicked like the other diplomats who were still hiding. She aimed with the precision of someone trained in real combat, not just ceremonial weapons. Jiho reached the ladder and climbed quickly. From the balcony, he had a perfect view of the rebel leader. One clean shot and Vex crumpled to the ground. Just as Jiho had predicted, the remaining rebels lost their coordination without their commander. "Surrender now!" Nera shouted, standing up with her weapon trained on them. "Your leader is down and reinforcements are coming." The rebels looked at each other uncertainly, then slowly dropped their weapons. Later that evening, back at the palace, Jiho found Nera in the war room, studying tactical reports. She had changed out of her torn diplomatic robes into simple work clothes, her hair pulled back practically. She looked more like a soldier than a princess. "You fight well," he said, bringing 2 cups of coffee. "Where did you learn to shoot?" "Like that?" "Military academy before I became heir to the throne," she replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "My father insisted I learn real skills, not just court etiquette. Most people don't know about my training." "Why keep it secret?" "Because princesses are supposed to be delicate flowers who need protection," she said with a bitter laugh. "If the council knew I could handle myself in combat, they might expect me to lead military campaigns instead of just looking pretty at diplomatic functions." Jiho sat down across from her. "That's stupid. Today proved we work well together. Your tactical thinking combined with combat skills, that's exactly what a leader should have." Nera looked up from her reports, studying his face. "You really mean that?" "Of course I do. Why would I lie? Because everyone lies to royalty. They tell us what they think we want to hear." "Well, I'm not everyone," Jiho said simply. "And honestly, I think your council is wrong about a lot of things." For the first time since their wedding, Naira smiled genuinely. "You know what? I'm starting to think so too." The mining colony of Zerion 7 looked like a place where hope went to die. Dusty red rocks stretched endlessly under a pale yellow sun, broken only by the massive excavation sites that scarred the landscape. Jiho stood beside Naira's transport ship, watching the local miners gather in the settlement's main square. "They don't look happy to see us," he observed, noting the hostile stares and crossed arms of the crowd. "Can you blame them?" Naira replied, adjusting her simple travel clothes. She had deliberately chosen not to wear royal robes for this trip. The last 3 governors raised their taxes and gave them nothing in return. Now they're talking about joining the rebel coalition. The colonial representative, a weathered woman named Kira, approached their small diplomatic party. Her face was hard as the rocks around them. "Princess," she said curtly, not bothering with formal bows, "we agreed to this meeting, but don't expect miracles. My people are tired of pretty promises." "I'm not here to make promises," Naira replied. "I want to listen." For the next 2 hours they sat in the colony's community center, a simple metal building that shook every time the mining equipment operated nearby. Jiho listened as the miners explained their problems. Equipment failures, medical supply shortages, communication blackouts that lasted for weeks. The complaints were practical, specific, and completely ignored by previous royal visits. "What do you need most urgently?" Naira asked, taking notes on a simple tablet instead of having servants. "Record everything." "Medical supplies," Kira answered immediately. 3 kids died last month from infections that would be easy to treat in the capital. We've requested supplies 17 times this year. Jiho saw something shift in Naira's expression. This wasn't just politics to her anymore. These were real people with real problems. "I can authorize an emergency medical shipment within the week," Naira said, "but I need you to trust that I'm different from the others." "Words are cheap, Princess," an old miner spoke up. "We've heard them before." That's when the first shot rang out. The window beside Naira exploded inward. Jiho tackled her to the ground as more shots peppered the building. Through the broken glass he could see masked figures with military-grade weapons surrounding the community center. "Assassins," he said grimly. "They followed us here." "No," Kira said, her face pale. "This is my fault. Someone must have told the rebels about the meeting. They think we're collaborating with the Empire." More shots hammered the building. The miners huddled against the walls, terrified. These were workers, not soldiers. They had no weapons, no training for this kind of attack. "There's a back exit," Kira pointed toward the rear of the building. "If you can reach it." "What about your people?" Naira asked. "We'll be fine once you leave. It's you they want." Jiho was already moving, checking the back door. Through a small window, he could see 2 more attackers positioned to cover the exit. They were trapped. "How many rounds do you have?" Naira asked, checking her own weapon. "Not enough," Jiho replied. "There are at least 8 of them, maybe more." "The mining equipment," one of the younger miners spoke up. "There's an excavation tunnel that connects to the next building. We could get out that way." "Show us," Jiho said. They moved through the community center, staying low as bullets continued to shatter windows above them. The tunnel entrance was hidden behind a supply closet, barely wide enough for 1 person at a time. "You go first," Jiho told Naira. "No, you go. I'm not leaving. These people." Princess Naira stared at the golden decree in her hands, her purple eyes scanning the same cruel words for the 10th time that morning. 20 days. The Royal Council had given her exactly 20 days to find a husband, or they would choose one for her. The thought made her stomach turn. She walked to the massive window of her tower room, looking down at the bustling alien city below. Hovering vehicles moved between the crystal spires, and market vendors sold exotic fruits that glowed in the afternoon light. This was her world, her people, her responsibility. But if she didn't marry soon, she would lose it all. The problem wasn't finding suitors. Dozens of alien nobles had already submitted marriage proposals, but Naira knew the truth behind their polite smiles and fancy gifts. They wanted her throne, not her. Each one would try to control her, make her a puppet ruler while they held the real power. She had watched it happen to her cousin on the neighboring planet of Zephyr. "There has to be another way," she whispered to herself, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. That's when she remembered the human soldier. Jiho Kim had arrived on her planet 6 months ago as part of the Galactic Peace Corps. Unlike the other alien warriors she had met, he was different. Quiet, professional, and most importantly, he had no interest in politics. He just did his job and minded his own business. During the recent border conflicts, his tactical skills had impressed even her most experienced generals. More importantly, he was planning to leave their planet soon. She had overheard him talking to his fellow soldiers about buying his own spaceship and becoming an independent trader. He needed money, and she needed a husband who wouldn't try to steal her crown. The idea was crazy, but it might actually work. 3 hours later, Naira found herself in the military compound, standing outside Jiho's modest quarters. Her royal guards waited at a distance, confused by their princess's unusual destination. She had never visited the human barracks before. She knocked on the metal door, her heart beating faster than she expected. Jiho opened the door, still wearing his combat uniform. He was tall for a human, with kind dark eyes and short black hair. When he saw her, his expression shifted from surprise to concern. Your Highness, is everything all right? Do you need security assistance?" "Actually, I need to discuss a business proposition with you," Naira said, trying to keep her voice steady. "May I come in?" Jiho hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside. His room was simple and clean with military precision. A few personal photos sat on his desk, showing him with other human soldiers, all smiling and laughing together. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to the only chair while he remained standing. "What kind of business are we talking about?" Naira took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change everything. "I need a husband, and you need money for a starship. I propose we help each other." Jiho's eyebrows shot up. "I'm sorry, what?" "A marriage contract," she continued quickly before she lost her nerve. 1 year only. You marry me, help me satisfy the Council's requirements, and I pay you enough credits to buy the best trading ship in the galaxy. After 1 year, we divorce, and you're free to go wherever you want." Jiho sat down heavily on his bed, staring at her. "You're serious?" "Completely serious. It would be purely business. No romantic expectations, no emotional complications. Just 2 people helping each other solve their problems." The room fell silent except for the hum of the air recycling system. Jiho rubbed his face with his hands, processing her offer. "Why me?" he finally asked. "Because you're the only person I've met who doesn't want my throne." The wedding ceremony had been a cold, formal affair. Jiho stood beside Princess Naira in his best military dress uniform, repeating ancient vows in a language he barely understood. The massive throne room was filled with alien dignitaries, their strange eyes watching his every move. When it was over, he felt like he had just signed the most expensive contract of his life. Now, 3 days later, he was regretting every word of their agreement. "Sir Jiho, your breakfast is served," announced Kexa, the head servant, as she placed an elaborate silver tray on the enormous dining table. The table could seat 20 people easily, but it was just him and Naira sitting at opposite ends like strangers. "Just Jiho is fine," he said for the 100th time, cutting into what looked like purple eggs. "You don't need to call me sir." The servants exchanged worried glances. In the corner, Royal Advisor Thane shook his head disapprovingly. Everything Jiho did seemed to break some invisible rule he didn't know existed. "The princess prefers her." "Morning meal in silence," Thane whispered loudly, as if Naira couldn't hear him perfectly well. Jiho looked across the ridiculously long table at his new wife. She was elegantly eating her breakfast, not making eye contact. This was ridiculous. "Hey, Naira," he called out, his voice echoing in the vast room. "Want to sit closer? I feel like I'm shouting across a football field here." The servants gasped. Advisor Thane looked like he might faint. Even the guards by the door seemed shocked. "You cannot address the princess so casually," Thane sputtered. "There are protocols, traditions." But Naira surprised everyone. She picked up her plate and walked to the chair next to Jiho. "He's right. This is silly." As she sat down, Jiho noticed something he hadn't seen during their formal meetings. She was actually quite pretty when she wasn't sitting stiffly on her throne. More importantly, she seemed relieved to break the stuffy routine. "So," Jiho said, pouring himself coffee from a pot that probably cost more than his former military salary. "What's the plan for today? Do I have princess husband duties or something?" Naira almost smiled. "Almost. There's a council meeting at noon. You're expected to attend as my husband." The word sounded strange coming from her mouth. They both felt the awkwardness of it. "Okay, but I should probably warn you," Jiho said, taking a bite of the purple eggs, which actually tasted pretty good. "I don't know anything about your politics. Back on Earth, I fixed military equipment and led small combat teams. I never went to fancy schools or learned about diplomacy." "That's actually refreshing," Naira admitted. "Most people here went to the same elite academies. They all think exactly alike." "What do you mean? Watch this." Naira turned to Advisor Thane. "What should we do about the trade disputes with the outer colonies? Increase tariffs and impose stricter regulations, Your Highness. Show them our strength." Naira nodded, then asked the same question to 2 other advisors who had just entered the room. They gave nearly identical answers, using almost the same words. "See?" she said quietly. To Jiho, "Everyone just repeats what they learned in school. No one thinks creatively anymore." Jiho was quiet for a moment, processing this. "What if you're approaching it wrong?" "What do you mean?" "Well, back in the military, when we had supply disputes, fighting usually made things worse. Have you tried actually talking to these colony people? Like really listening to what they need?" The question was so simple, so obvious, that Naira stopped eating. When was the last time someone had asked her to consider the other side's perspective instead of just finding ways to force compliance? She started, then realized she didn't have a good answer. "Your Highness," Advisor Thane interrupted, "surely you're not considering taking advice from someone with no political experience?" Jiho felt his face flush. The advisor wasn't wrong, but the dismissive tone stung. He was about to apologize when Naira surprised him again.